cited
is
that
what he's
evidence
saying.
incorrectly. He
But
said
that's fine, but it's not
yeah.
a belief. It's not a belief. He's citing evidence, a meeting that happened.
Oh, I see what you're
revisions that
saying.
happened.
He's
He's not
saying
saying
that
I
this
believe
were-
it. He's saying no,
but-
that's evidence that the
I
Bible may
see
not
what
be
you're
true.
saying in that.
I'm
yeah.
not a religious scholar. I just have something I'm a little curious about.
Yeah.
So we did talk about how there is a lot of different versions of the Bible, different translations, things like that, and it has been edited and revised a lot over the time. And I guess the thing I would just like to put out there is I think it's a little naive to suggest that a book that has been so dominant and culturally and politically influential was never altered intentionally.
Well, I think I think that's a very valid and fair point. But to answer that, what we mean by that the Bible hasn't changed is it would be like as if we had a dinosaur head, right? And it's covered in mud, and we, to the best of our ability, we uncovered as much mud as possible. That's in a museum. You could say that is a dinosaur head. Now, hundreds of years later, we find new technology to remove more of the mud. Did the dinosaur head change? No, we just got rid of the mud that was on there. So when we have different translations, what we're trying to do is as we're discovering earlier and earlier manuscripts, we're trying to edit the versions that we have that maybe have been mistranslated to get closer to the source work. So what we're doing is we're not adding things, but we're actually subtracting things every time we make an earlier discovery of what's been earlier found in the manuscripts.
So what do you think the most accurate version of the Bible is?
The most accurate version of the Bible, and that's a great question, is the one that's closest in time to when it was actually written, the original source document. That
But
document,
it wasn't a single document.
You're right, it was multiple documents. And so when we look at the book of
Many
Mark, when we look at the book of
documents
Mark, or when we look at the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, we look at them individually and say, what if we can go to the original source time that Mark was written? That's the closest that we want to say is our standard. We want to keep getting there. We don't look at, hey, the Septuagint put the whole Bible together, now this is it, that's done. No, we constantly try to get closer and closer. That's why you have different translations, or the King James Version has verses that the ESV does not have.
But do you think that the fact that, for example, John was written like 90 years after Jesus died, it was written so much later, does that bring any doubt at all into how accurate it could be? Like if an event happened today and then we're waiting 90 years for someone
That's an excellent question.
to start writing it
we
down.
have video evidence of things that people deny happen when they watch the video. I have to
That's true.
imagine the 90-year
Yeah,
thing
that's
is
true.
No, that's
90 years
fair-
is going to
that's a
make
fair
it like
critique.
how can you trust that when it's
Not
been
if
that
it
long?
tells the same consecutive story.
How would you
It
know?
still
'Cause this is the first one you
aligns.
read.
I mean,
Well, there's four
we-
accounts, right? There's four
Yeah.
gospels telling the same story, and so that's
don't
that's
all
part
agree.
of
They
the
don't
reason
agree.
why
They do
and
not
they tell it
You'd
in
have to
this.
show
They tell it in
contradiction.
the same.
They hit the same bullet points,
Yeah.
but even you guys have to acknowledge that there are
There's different people
minor
inside,
They bring
outside.
different
viewpoints.
perspectives, but there is no contradiction. But I want to bring back to your point, because you brought up a really good point. Okay, John, written years after Jesus died. But when we look at that, in the ancient historical world, that's actually extremely fast. It was within his lifespan that it was written, that John's own lifespan that was written, and which is only like, I think the earliest fragments we have is like 80-30s when we find the first fragments of John, but the actual book concluded at, like much later. But we still have within all of that, the whole Bible was written within 100 years of Jesus' death. That's what we can say from a safe perspective.
That's extremely
That's
long
extreme.
in
No, that's
reality,
extremely
though.
fast when you compare it to
When
other works of
comparing, but
antiquity.
why-
when you compare it
why
to
does
other works of
comparison
antiquity,
bring in factuality?
Well, that's because what the prompt is this an ancient, reliable historical document? And if you say the works of Caesar or the works of Genghis Khan are ancient, historical, reliable documents, I mean, you believe that Caesar died, you believe who he was.
Not if they
and
claim
historians believe.
not if they claim miraculous,
This is where we want-
fantastical.
I wanted to
so
go
now
to,
you're,
yeah.
but that's a different. We can talk about that. But the original line of thinking that you brought up was, okay, if it was written so much later, then it's not as accurate. Well, actually, the Bible for its time, I think we can both agree, was written remarkably fast compared to other works of antiquity,
that
where we have
doesn't say anything
hundreds
about
of years.
accuracy.
No, and that's just for that point that I'm talking about.
Historians also don't look at like those other works that you said and be like, "Yep, this is definitely 100% accurate." They're going like within.
They rely
reason.
on
They're
them
going.
for
They're going
historical
within
data,
reason,
though.
but they're definitely not saying like, "Oh yeah, how it was written. This is definitely how it happened."
I think there's two things that we're also kind of sidestepping here is you use the dinosaur head analogy, Genghis Khan, all that stuff. We don't make laws and ethics and moral claims from dinosaur heads, Genghis Khan. The Bible is in other religious texts have a special cultural and social place that I think we have to treat it a little bit differently than we would a textbook on the ancient pottery traditions of the Mesopotamians, right? So I think we need to handle that